Five Nights at Freddy's is over 11 years old now, and to celebrate I decided to take a step away from Secret of the Mimic and the Steel era and look back at the original 6-ish games and see what I can find. And well, person watching this video, I think I may have finally solved the death order, maybe even the entire timeline. Okay, that last part was a bit of an exaggeration, but still, I think that what I found is very, very interesting. Ahoy there tailwaggers, my name is Tori and you are watching me. This is my channel and you're watching it. Welcome. Today's video is going to involve maybe multiple different theories, so it might be a bit of a long one, but we'll see. The main focus of today is the death order, and how I think the grand closure of Freddy Fazbear's is the key to solving it. Before I get into the theory, I'm going to politely beg you to like the video. Please, 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 it helps a ton, and if you change your mind, you can always undo it later. Don't worry about subscribing, trust me, I will earn your subscription by the end of the video. And now, on with the theory. For a while now, a big debate in the Fnaf fandom has been the death order. Usually, who died first? Maybe it was the crying child, Dave Afton, giving Afton a motive for his crimes. Maybe it was Elizabeth, explaining why Nightmare Fredbear looks that way, I guess. Maybe it was Charlie, in the book she died the same year as Dave. But the community has never really agreed on one answer. And so in search, I looked back at some of the older games and I noticed something. Fnaf 3's description. 30 years after Freddy Fazbear's Pizza closed its doors, the events that took place there have become nothing more than a rumor and a childhood memory. After Freddy's closed its doors? Well, which closure? Freddy's has closed at least 3 times that we're aware of. Then I remembered Fnaf 2. Constantly, the 1987 location is referred to as a grand reopening. If a Freddy's had closed multiple times by now, why would this new location be some grand reopening? It only makes sense for this location to be a grand event if it's the first Freddy's to open after the first closure, after the missing children's incident. So can the same be said for the closure mentioned in Fnaf 3? Well, this YouTuber suggested that maybe the closure mentioned in the Fnaf 3 description was also the MCI, the first closure in 1985, as the novel trilogy was likely being written around this time, which is where we first get the year 1985, putting Fnaf 3 30 years after the MCI in 2015, the same year it was released. I really like this video. I'll leave it in the description, so please check it out. It's my main inspiration for this theory, and I really think more people need to see this. Moving on, why does the 1985 closure matter to today's theory? It was possibly mentioned in Fnaf 3 and is the reason for the 1987 location opening, but why does that matter now? Well, I don't think this is the last time we hear about this closure. We later hear about it again in sister location.
Due to the massive success, and even more so the unfortunate closing of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, it was clear that the stage was set, no pun intended, for another contender in children's entertainment.
Whether this is referring to Circus Baby's Pizza World or the rental service doesn't really matter, as the rental service was likely opened soon after Circus Baby's closure anyway, but even so, I think it's more likely that this is referring to Circus Babies. Regardless, we know Afton was trying to experiment with Remnant, and the Fun Times were always designed to do what they do in the rental service. Even if they had just done it in this pizzeria rather than being sent out to private parties, they'd still do the same thing. Is it possible that this Freddy's closure is a different closure to 1985? Of course it is. But from a writer's perspective, I think it makes a lot more sense for the Freddy's closure mentioned in this game to be the same one that's been mentioned as early as Fnaf 2. And from an in-universe perspective, we know that the MCI led to lots of bad press surrounding Fazbear Entertainment, so if there were ever a good time for rivaling businesses like Circus Babies to take the spotlight, it'd be then. So, if correct, how does this affect the timeline? Well, firstly, it tells us definitively that Dave died first in 1983, which isn't very surprising, but it also tells us that the MCI likely happened before Elizabeth's death, placing the death of Elizabeth just after 1985, which isn't a new idea, but at least we have a little bit more to go off of. But where does Charlie's death fit into this? Oh, and the DCI, if you believe in that, I guess. Well, I know this answer might be a tiny bit controversial. I think Charlie definitely died in 1987. Okay, calm down, at least let me explain. Quick disclaimer, most of my answer for this section of the video will be coming from Fazbear Entertainment, the channel, not the company. and his 2 videos on the Charlie 87 theory. While my answer will be a little different, most of it will be based on his 2 videos, so please check them out, they will also be in the description. Despite popular belief, there is in fact next to no evidence in the games for Charlie dying in 1983. The reason this assumption is so popular is because, as I mentioned earlier, Charlie dies in 1983 in the novel trilogy. The one piece of evidence people always seem to use to support this theory is this line from Henry in Pizzeria Simulator.
A wound first inflicted on me, but then one that I let bleed out to cause all of this.
But if you listen to the entire speech, he's quite clearly not talking about Charlie. See, this line is from the Insanity ending. In this ending's monologue, Henry talks about the MCI and the events of the Follow Me minigame, comparing the 2 events, talking about how William used familiar tricks to lure the missing children to him once again. Henry then talks about his own plan to lure them all together in one place and
heal this wound. A wound first inflicted on me, but then one that I let bleed out to cause all of this.
he calls the MCI a wound that needs healing, a wound first inflicted on him. The MCI was a personal attack on Henry and his business, likely out of jealousy, just like Charlie in the novel trilogy. But why would Henry call the deaths of the missing children a wound inflicted on him? Well, why would he call the death of his daughter a wound inflicted on him either? It's because the wound he's talking about isn't death, it's the motive behind it. So if there isn't really any evidence for her death being in 1983, then how do I know she died in 1987? Well, in Fnaf 2, the first game we see Charlie's death, Ralph mentions rumors of a tragedy, a death. He says,
I can personally assure you that whatever is going on out there, however tragic it may be, has nothing to do with our establishment.
Regardless of what Fazbear establishment you think Charlie died outside of, it's fact that she died outside of a Fazbear establishment. If this were the 1987 location, then it'd make perfect sense for there to be rumors around Fazbear. Charlie's body was found directly outside the restaurant. Unlike the MCI, the police likely wouldn't be able to tie it to Freddy's immediately, as the body was outside the building, not inside the building. Too detached for the police to blame Fazbear immediately, but close enough to cause suspicion.
It has nothing to do with our establishment.
Where was Henry when this happened?
We don't talk about that area.
That might deserve its own separate theory. Moving on, if Charlie died in 1987, then how was Charlie present in these cutscenes? How would the Give Gifts Give Life minigame take place if Charlie died in 1987? Well, believe it or not, there's actually no mention of possession from the animatronics until 1987. The newspapers only talk about bad smells and blood and mucus leaking from the suit, likely from the bodies, but no mention of them moving around. So it's very possible that this minigame doesn't happen until 1987 either. If you want to know more about this theory, again, please check out Fazbear Entertainment's videos on the subject. They explain it a lot better than me. The links will be in the description. Now, what about their DCI? Did it actually happen? Well, yes, I think it did. But the question is, when? Well, if we look at the Save Them minigame, who's the one leading Withered Freddy? Charlie, the puppet. So the DCI has to happen after Charlie. Whether you think this happens when Afton's on his night shift, or if it happens at the end of the week, doesn't really matter. The important part is that the DCI has to die after Charlie. And while we're on the subject, we could easily slot Give Gifts Give Life right here, just before the Save Them minigame. The puppet could have helped the MCI possess the animatronics right before the minigame, explaining why the puppet guides Withered Freddy to the DCI children and Afton. It gives the puppet a reason to help the MCI, and gives a nice explanation for why we're shown this minigame during FNAF 2 specifically. So now that we've got all of this evidence, time to have a quick recap on what I think the death order is. Starting in 1983, we have the death of the crying child Dave Afton in FNAF 4. Fredbear's closes down, and in that same year, the first Freddy Fazbear's is open. Managed by Henry Emily, the business ran smoothly for about 2 years, until one day in June of 1985, William Afton, maybe out of jealousy, lures and kills 5 children in Freddy's safe room as an attempt to shut down Henry's business. And well, it works. Afton closes Freddy's down and kills 5 children to do so, a wound that Henry dedicates the rest of his life to heal. William, now able to use Fazbear characters, opens Circus Baby's Pizza World between 1985 and 1986, as a way to collect and experiment with Remnant. But before opening day, his daughter Elizabeth is killed by his own creation and Circus Baby's Pizza World is cancelled. Around a year later, in 1987, Fazbear Entertainment opens their first new location. But just like before, Afton makes an appearance and takes the life of Henry's daughter, Charlie Emily. Now possessing the puppet, Charlie leads the MCI to possess their bodies to try and stop Afton. History is echoing and Afton kills another set of 5 children, the DCI. When these events are made public, Freddy's is, of course, forced to close once more. Afton did it again. At least this time, it doesn't seem like he'll be able to come back through a third string of murders. Before the 1987 closes, they have one more event, a birthday, where Jeremy will be on day shift and is told to stay really close to the animatronics. And well, I think we all know what happens next. So there you have it. That's how this simple dialogue detail helped me finally solve the death order. If you do disagree, that's completely fine. After writing this video, I kind of realized that my timeline is basically the same as Fazbear Entertainment, minus the inclusion of the DCI, so if the Charlie 87 mention wasn't enough to convince you to check his channel out, that certainly should. It'll be in the description. Now, I didn't include any of the deaths from Secret of the Mimic because I wanted to focus on the original games and Afton's crimes specifically. Whether you agree or disagree, make sure to comment it down below because I read every single one, but please keep the comments polite. I've had a lot of very rude comments recently, which, you know, it's about what you expect when you post online. But I don't know, can we please try to keep it civil, guys? Please. Subscribe if you think I earned it, and I will see you at some point, I'm sure. Bye-bye for now.